Welcome to the Mentors and Moguls Podcast. I'm your host, Heather Stone. I bring you mentors and moguls from all around the world, different walks of life, from creatives to CEOs to business leaders to top athletes and all kinds of other people in between. Today, we're talking about time management and how to be the CEO of your life with Alicia Driskill. Alicia is a visionary. She's a leader and an expert connector, a keynote speaker, and a strategic advisor who is passionate about creating a more equitable future for all. For over 20 years, she has enjoyed a diverse career in media and marketing, working with some of the world's most recognizable brands and thought leaders throughout her corporate career as an entrepreneur. I'm so happy to share Alicia Driskill with you today. Thank you for joining the Mentors and Moguls podcast today. I am very pleased that we have the esteemed Miss Alicia Driskill here to talk about time management and how to be the CEO of your life. Welcome, Alicia.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You've had such an amazing career, a very well-rounded career, and I'm kind of fascinated and a little bit thrilled to be talking to someone in your position because you've not only had the chance to coach and speak around the world to some of the best organizations, the Fortune 100 organizations about time management and how to run your business, but there are so many women out there that are trying to pivot in this day and age. And they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I reinvent myself now that the pandemic is kind of over? I say over. How can I reinvent myself? How can I manage being a mother? How can I manage starting a new business, maybe taking my side hustle and creating it into something that's my main hustle to pay the bills that I can, now that I can work remotely. And I really want to design my life. Time management always gets in the way. And it could be the difference between making or breaking the next year for you. So can we dive into that a little bit? And you can give me some of your best tips and advice and help someone out there that's struggling, because I don't know anybody that's not struggling at one point or another with balance and time management. How do you set up your day to manage your time, being a busy mother and a busy CEO? Give us a little window into your best advice and what does your day look like to set you up for success?
I really feel like it's changed a lot lately, given everything was shifting and working from home with the pandemic. And, before in corporate or even at EvolveHer at my own business, I would have it down to the T. And what I found when I transitioned to my home is that all of a sudden I'm always accessible, even if I lock the door or put up signs or, the lawn guy comes by. It's, those things you can't control. And so in the beginning, we were all kind of thrown off by it, but then we all adjusted and, we figured out a routine. But there's still some nuances that we have to work through. I think the biggest thing with the approach to time management is looking at your priorities and really understanding what is the most important for you. And so from a day-to-day perspective, I had to recarve out that time for myself because I would get up and it was like immediately in mom mode, getting the kids ready for school, shifting them out the door. And then there's no transition time like there was before. And most people hate the commute. I loved it because that was Alicia time to where I could catch up on my phone calls or I could listen to podcasts. And I love to learn. And so that would fill me up. And then I would get to the office and the energy and the conversations and just be in that mode. And so now I've really shifted into creating a ritual in the morning to make sure that I have some moments to myself and really reflect on what I want to do for the day, looking at my priorities and making sure I'm going to be able to accomplish something because I feel like our to-do lists are so long that a lot of times, we just want to mark them off. And so making sure I outline, here are the 3 things that I want to get done today that are going to actually make a difference in my business and move things forward. And then at the end of the day, making sure that you kind of circle back to those and then get set up for the next day. That way you can jump in instead of coming in and just getting started. I also think on the balance side, I've never really been a fan of the word balance because there's no such thing. And so I shifted to work-life integration was, kind of how I would talk about it the past few years. And now somebody said the other day, work-life harmony. And I felt like that really represented where I am and what I want in my life, because it's not this constant integration. It's, it aligns with where I am at this time of my life and what I've defined. And so I think really being crystal clear on what you want that to look like, so then you can set your boundaries around that is essential.
Very true. Very true. Yes, I have to agree with you with the word balance. I get this mental image of a woman with sweatpants on the bottom, a baby bottle and a diaper, and a baby on your hip on the left, and you've got your computer and your headset and everything on your right, and trying to figure out how does this go. Oh yes, and there's soccer practice, and someone is sick. It's
Uh-huh.
tough. It's tough to keep it all together up here.
It's somebody, I had a friend, a colleague when I was over at People Magazine. I had just had my first child, and she told me, if you look at things like a pendulum, and so with work on one side and your family on the other, and know that it's going to swing, sometimes more on the other, but it always swings back. And so to take a step back and to really look at the bigger picture of things instead of being so focused on those 2 weeks that you haven't been able to see your kids. And so if you take that broader picture approach, then it allows you to really be intentional and present when you're going to be with them, because you were able to be completely present and focused when you're at your job. So that definitely helped me kind of transition out of the balance mindset and really figuring out what would work for me.
Right. One of the things that you mentioned was boundaries. And I think that this word is so much bigger than we think, because there's boundaries now that we're all working remotely from home. When do you say,
Mhm.
don't enter my office? I'm not available. I need to focus. And when are the boundaries when you've got your boss or a coworker texting you at 11 o'clock at night because they know you're available and accessible? What do you say about that?
Yeah, that it's actually very, very hard. It's easy to talk about, but it's very hard to create them and to stick with them, because there's always that great opportunity. There's always just this time, or, just for a moment, I'm going to look at this. But I found that if you don't hold yourself accountable for those boundaries that you put in place, then you'll just continue to be torn, and your time management for your output, for your family, all of those things. Like, you're not going to be able to deliver on those goals that you set for yourself, or you'll constantly be torn. I think it's really important when you're looking at your self care and self love too, or however you replenish your soul or your creative spirit for your work. It's very important to make sure you set time to do that, because so many times we're constantly going, and, it's like life in the fast lane. We just work and we're in this mode, and you just by default are going and, all the time. And sometimes when you get home, it's the martyr mom situation where you're doing everything for everybody else, but you never refill your cup. And so it eventually leads to burnout. And by really establishing clear boundaries around your space too, to make sure that, 2 hours a week, you're able to spend time on something that you enjoy, or something that fills you up, or a project is really important, in addition to those work boundaries and, communicating with your family what you're going to establish, or how you're going to establish those boundaries. And so then they can also hold you accountable for those as well.
So if you're a CEO and you're starting out a new business, let's say, and now you're starting to hire and onboard others underneath you to help you. Hopefully they're more intelligent than you are. That's the best way to be. Hire smarter people than you are, and you all look good and do a better job, and you all grow together, right? That's the plan.
Yes, 100%.
But systems. So I believe you're pretty big on systems and having something put together, and SOPs. So even your small organization, maybe it's 3 or 4 or 5 people, it's your side hustle that's becoming your main hustle. What is the best way not to be overwhelmed, and how do you create a system in small bites? What advice do you have for someone?
Yes, it's really important, even for hiring a VA. I mean, if you're a thought leader or a speaker or a solopreneur, when you start to pull in somebody else in your business, you have to start to document processes and really making sure that there's some kind of structure in place or clarity on communication, so that you're able to give them the task, communicate expectations of what does success look like, even because what I define as success or the output may be different than what they may have in mind. So really defining that and documenting it, and also sometimes having them help along the way. So I have a system that I like to use where you start with kind of the core foundation on the operational side of how you're going to use technologies. So if I'm going to use Asana for project management, if I'm going to use Slack for communication to minimize emails, and HubSpot for CRM or pipeline management. And so I have that core foundation and training people on those systems, but then also giving it giving them the opportunity to really give you feedback and to help you build this. And so it's not a one and done, it's a constantly evolving model, but at the same time, there's enough framework in there that they can go and do their jobs. They don't have to constantly be coming to you and asking questions because you've empowered them and gave them the tools to do it. And then once they get to the certain point, they're either reviewing the output or, you're continuing the conversation around what their needs would be. So I think it's so important to be able to have those systems in place. And then as you look to delegate, even taking advantage of tools like Loom, to where you can do a video and record yourself going through a process. And so you start to create a library, save them, tag them, systematize everything. So then as you bring and grow your team, you're not starting from scratch, because it does take a while to do it. But if you can, just start little by little, and focus on a lane of responsibilities, it'll really make a difference.
It does make a difference. So I know that we had a small company and we grew it to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. And we started doing that because I was running one section of the training and I thought, okay, this is taking me away from my core focus. I wanted to make sure they did the right thing. And we started creating videos. And once we did it, I thought, why didn't I do this sooner? But you evolve, you figure it out.
Right.
Yeah. But even if you're a 2-man show, you can still create those videos because people can look at those in their downtime when they're ready to be receptive and learn, right?
That's exactly it. Because so many times especially with onboarding, you come into a new job and somebody's in the role, or you're training them, and then you're just giving them so much information and they get it in the moment and they're excited. But then when you go to actually do it, maybe your notes weren't as good as you thought they were, or, they want to go back and revisit that. And so that gives them the chance to really go. And when they're ready to focus and can do it on their own time or in their own way, dive deeper into it so that they can really wrap their head around it.
That's
100%.
exactly right. So let's talk a little bit about overwhelm and delegation. This I hear from women that I coach on a regular basis. I'm wearing 20 hats. I can't afford to hire somebody. I've got to do this with a shoestring and a prayer and try and make this work. And I'm overwhelmed. And when I finally do get a VA or someone else, I don't know how to let go of a task. I micromanage to death, and you wonder why they leave you. So what do you say to someone that needs to let go, but they just don't feel comfortable letting go yet?
I think this is the biggest challenge with scaling, is that, especially if it's your personal business and you have created this amazing, company, and to be able to trust somebody and hand it over is huge. And so what I find is that a lot of founders will get very stuck in the details that don't matter. So instead of focusing on the big picture, or we want to create masterpieces with everything, right? And I'm all about putting beautiful work out there. And I call myself a recovering perfectionist, because I used to be such a perfectionist and everything had to be exactly where I wanted before I went out. But I learned very quickly that is not going to allow me to scale. And it's also not going to allow me to create the impact that I want. So I think really being able to get to about 80-85% and working with them. So if they can get to that point, and then you can give them feedback to finalize it or eventually hand it off completely, that is the ideal situation. And so what happens is, if people are focusing on these details like social media, or, some of these little things that aren't connected to revenue or to growing, scaling the business, strategic partnerships, or thought leadership, then they burn themselves out, because you're spending so much time and you're just burning cash, because the resources that you put against something, and then you're coming in and I'm sure you've heard of the hourly rate and looking at your own hourly rate. When you get outsourced something for $20 versus what you get paid, that usually resonates very well with founders. But still, sometimes the actual execution of it is a lot harder than, talking it through. But definitely gradually, gradually letting it go and trusting them, building that relationship and communicating is so key.
I think that trust, that's a really good point, because trust is so important. When you have someone that's coming in and they're new and you say, this is an important client, I don't want you to screw it up because it took me a long time to set it up to this point, right? That's a common theme. But if you can take someone and show them that you trust them,
Mm-hmm.
they will shine for you so much more than if you put them under your thumb and micromanage them. And I learned that very early on in my career because I was so worried about letting go, because I thought, you don't even know the blood that I put into this whole process until now. And with one fell swoop, you lack of your knowledge, your lack of your experience, whatever was in my mind, you could kill the whole thing for me and have to start over. And I think once I figured out that I could trust people, they just went 10 steps higher so much faster. And if I would have gotten out of my own way a long time ago, my life would have been so much easier. But that's a hard thing for people to learn.
It is. And I think that the employees, they're excited to work with you and they come on because they believe in the mission, they believe in the company, but to then empower them and to allow them to be seen or give them, a platform to be heard and to have input and to help you build it together. That is so much more powerful. And to your point, they want to be part of that and something bigger than themselves or just a collaborative group of people that are working towards the same goal. And it can really change your business. But as you said, it's so difficult sometimes to let that go.
So, when do you think a good time, speaking of letting go, when is it a good time or the perfect time or the ideal time, I should say, for someone to realize I need a PA, I need a partner,
Mhm.
I need a team?
Yeah, I would say when you are staying up late and on the weekends and you're canceling appointments or you're feeling stressed about things because you're doing all of the work, you don't want to get to that point. So if you can take a step back and look at it when you can recognize some of those signs that are starting to appear before that critical breakdown overwhelm moment, that's the time. Or if you have something big coming up and you're going to be, doing a press push or a book launch, or, you have these things in specific timelines against it, you want to make sure everything is working very well by the time you get there. And so to back out, 6 months, a year, whatever that is. And so really looking at the different, basically your roadmap and how things are outlined for the year, 2 years, 3 years, but also looking at your current workload, your stress level, and then understanding what you love to do, what you don't love to do, what somebody is better at and you can outsource, or, the tasks that you may enjoy doing sometimes, but somebody could just rock out that Excel spreadsheet. Like, I'm a data nerd, but I know somebody who really knows how to work those documents can create it so much quicker than I can. And so recognizing that, and again, going back to that hourly rate and the value of your time, and what that can be spent on, doing a little math, it'll shock you sometimes.
That's very true. I used to spend, even though I was in the tech world, I used to spend a lot of time and pride myself by having several monitors going at the same time, lickety split. But there was a point when I realized I wasn't as fast at certain things. So I had my little ace in the hole, and I would call one of the gals that worked for us, and she did extremely well. She's gone on to have a phenomenal career, but she would run circles around me at certain tasks. And I finally said, why am I spending an hour and a half of my time when I could be generating so much more business? And she could do it probably in 10 minutes. So
it's so true.
yeah,
It's so true. And something like social media too is so funny because I enjoy writing, but when I have to sit down and write a post or social media or an article, it takes me forever. And so when I hired a social team, they would just turn around beautiful content once they, got brand alignment, and the voice and everything. And I was just blown away because it's just second nature, for a lot of people, or they really know how to communicate across the systems. And so it was it was a great hire to have that team come on. And then you can guide them and give your input. So it's still, representative of you and your brand, but it's not your time that's being sucked, doing that task.
that's right. So you're talking about, do you want to train your team and make sure that they represent your brand the way you would like to be represented when you're not looking. So I go back to something like a mission statement. What is your culture? What is your philosophy? And I used to write out, here's my non-negotiables. Here's the things that I want to accomplish by the end of this month. This is where we're all going. And everybody needs to be rowing in the same direction. You might have a team that says, I've got 5 different ways to get there. Great. Whatever is best for you, whatever gets us there, be open to it. How do you set aside, or how do you set up your mission statement or set up your culture, as a solopreneur when you're hiring your a few people? What's the easiest and best way to do that?
Yeah, I think this is so important and often overlooked if it's a smaller business or a solopreneur. And I would take a day, take 2 days, and really dive into what you want to accomplish. Thinking about that mission statement, your core values, the culture, we did non-negotiables too. I mean, it was very important for us and what we stood for. I wanted to make sure that it was clear, because when we're hiring people, we hire and fire based off of all of those values, because we want to make sure that our team understands how we work, what motivates us, and then taking in everybody's perspectives. That's the magic. It's like, if you can have that team aligned with everything, but then allowing them to have the voices to chime in and, to have just a diverse set of perspectives and input, then there's so much value in that. And making sure that you have people who will listen and are open to that too, because if you don't have the right people in the right positions, they're not going to be happy. And everybody knows, when you hire, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And so to replace people is not fun for anyone. And so really making sure that you understand what you want to accomplish, what your goals are, but also, what are the core values of your company, and even like the work style. Do you have expectations for people to answer after a certain time? Do you tell them that you respond at 11 o'clock at night, but you don't need them to respond at 11 o'clock. So just having those conversations and like thinking that through before you even bring in people is really important, so that you're able to communicate everything clearly and get it out of your head, so that they know, what you expect from them, or if it's a right fit for them before they come on board.
That's right. So I think I'm going to carry that over to letting others speak for you. There's important contacts that you have that you just guard very closely, and important phone calls and messages and emails. At what point did you feel comfortable for letting someone speak for you? Respond to those emails, call that person back and represent you and make decisions on your behalf. Thoughts?
Yeah. So since I was in corporate for 17 years, and I had an assistant and a team there, and I saw the power of it and the impact, that was very early in the game, an important hire for me, because it was less about giving them the reins to speak on behalf. It was about knowing what I could accomplish if we could work together. And so I love conversation. I love connection. I love meeting people. And I'm the person who may have met you 10 years ago, and I just met a new person and you guys could do business together. Or, I'm always connecting people, but I can't do it at scale or efficient or as much as like I truly enjoy it, unless I have somebody who can help me with some of the back end or keeping it moving. And then in sales and partnerships too, because we're dealing with, $7, $8, $9 million deals, and or 7, 8, 9 figure deal. Sorry. And it was a lot that we were pushing through for clients. And so to be able to have large scale and a large number of clients, we needed to be able to keep those moving along, but it's a lot of work. So when I moved over and started my business, I had a couple of people helping out initially, part-time. And then once I was able to bring on an assistant and really great leads and integrators on the different teams, it was huge for a business.
Yeah. I think bringing people in when you're comfortable, you kind of get your comfort level with everyone, and letting them run with it and letting them shine. I just think it's a win-win.
Yes, I know. And I feel like the sharing of information, I've always been a fan of the empowerment side of it. But when I have even junior employees coming in, I want them to see how I talk to clients, and I want them to see my interaction. I feel like the most efficient and best way to do that is to CC them or have them sit in a meeting, or, to have them be part of a conversation, and then they build confidence, and then they start to speak up, and, they learn along the way. And so while we can't sit down and, go through everything and not always mentor as an entrepreneur as much as we would love to, that's a way where they can see it and be a part of that conversation at an early age, and learn some of the stuff along the way just by being in the room.
That's right. That's right. Modeling, I think, is great. And then you teach someone else and they can go ahead and model and duplicate what you're doing, and then even enhance things because they've got,
Mhm.
okay, I learned this way from modeling from her, and now I'm going to add my own flavor to it and take it from there.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. That's where the value is.
All right. Overwhelm, stress, anxiety. It would be ridiculous if we didn't really talk about this because it's a
Mhm.
daily thing and it's very real. I see a lot of people, women and men, they're ready to start something new. And it took a lot of courage to step out of whatever they were doing, or maybe they were
Mhm.
forced out of, their job was eliminated, and try something new and finally say, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to go for. And it's a brave move for a lot of people. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I got to make it a run for it and see where it goes. But at a certain point, you've got to-do lists that are about 50 to 100 tabs long. You say that you
Mhm.
like to accomplish 3 things every day. I'm on the same page with you there. But at a certain point, you hit the overwhelm button because it just kind of starts snowballing and there's so many unknowns. Everything is new, so it takes a lot more energy than it would if you were 2 or 3 years down the road and okay, we already got the system down for that. How do you deal with that? How do you suggest someone pace themselves so they don't hit that wall and then the whole thing blows up in a big cloud of frustration and they just throw it all in the trash?
Yes. There are so many different pieces to this. And I think so many people right now or over the past year have experienced this overwhelm, and which often leads to that feeling of just being stuck where you can't move forward because you just have so many thoughts about it, or you don't want to make the wrong move. And I've always been a big believer in taking risks. And, that's, I think, in my core and my DNA. But I mean, COVID definitely threw me for a loop with everything that was happening, because it's not just taking a risk, it's that we don't know when things are going to change or what the future looks like. I mean, look at the past couple of years, it's been wild, and it's still, in that gray space. And so I think really being able to take a step back and to start to recognize those signs where you're feeling overwhelmed. And if you can learn, from self-awareness and reflection and understanding when you start to feel that way and what to look for, that helps a lot, because then you can kind of triage it and get ahead of it or fix it in the situation. And so I think when you're having kind of that procrastination or avoidance, and or like a visceral reaction, or you don't want to jump out of bed for something that you normally love to do, or that you're just spending all this time on it but it's not delivering the results, stressing, all of those different pieces, you need to take a break. And it's, I think, sometimes challenging for a lot of people, because to step away from it seems like you're leaving it, and how are you going to solve it if you walk away from it? But really, that is what allows your brain to process, through the stress cycle, and to actually have the blank space enough to replenish your thoughts or to be inspired by something outside of your four walls, or, the project that you're working on. And so it's so important to take that time and to process things and to just get clarity for yourself on what is really important and what you want to do. Because when we're in the middle of, chaos or burnout, we often don't make decisions from the place that we would if we were really in that abundant mindset and, moving forward when things are, I guess, when you're in flow. And so to be able to take a minute, pause, go on a vacation, go for a walk, whatever it is that lights you up, draw, paint, do that so that you're able to just have a different perspective. And then also looking at, how do you really define those boundaries again? And like, how do you set time up for yourself, or putting some procedures or people in place to help you do that, or talking with a group I'd say community is also probably the second in my book of like the biggest thing, is having a group of people that support you, because you need to have career, people at the same career point, or people above you, people who inspire you at all different levels. But then also looking at friends and old friends who've known you and you can just be completely vulnerable with, or the new friends in between. Like, you've got to have a group of people to be able to talk things through, because I definitely have a girlfriend who every time I've, wanted to do something that I was going to walk away from a lot of opportunities that were good opportunities. And she's like, Alicia, and we talk it out, and so you don't want to react from that fear, because sometimes if you were in a different situation, you would make a different call. And so being able to put those bumpers into place to make sure, okay, I run it by my friends who know me well. I'm going to take a moment just to clear my head and not react, and then I'll respond to it.
I love that you brought it up about being vulnerable. And sometimes I think it's very important, and it's your best friend, to be vulnerable, even to strangers in a community. And I agree with you with the community. But if you can do that, they've got all kind of great advice. That's why we're talking today.
Yeah.
You are a wonderful mentor for women that are struggling with a lot of things, or just want to aspire to be like you or half of what you've done. So that community is key. But if you're not vulnerable, you can't get help for a problem that nobody knows you need answers to. And it's not the kiss of death to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this part. Can you help me? I think it shows a lot of strength and courage to say that, right?
It does. And I feel like when you can step up and be vulnerable and to say, I'm struggling with this, or it is hard to be a mom and to work, and like, there are so many things going on. And I feel like I am showing up at 50% all the time. How did you do this? Or whatever it is, those people around you oftentimes are so happy you said that, because they feel the same way. Or somebody's who has older kids, they're like, let me tell you. It becomes this, I don't know, you just have such a deeper connection in this interactive conversation, and people start to open up because you were able to share that with them. And I think it is so important for you to know that you're not alone. And we just sent out a survey recently, and it was interesting because it really, like, all the answers boiled down to people who wanted to pivot, evolve, and who were stuck and overwhelmed, or people who really needed to systematize, and they wanted to put processes in place so that they could align their life with the new direction they want to go, and say no to things that don't serve them. And so the responses, when you get into more details, the emotions that were behind them with not setting boundaries, you want to be able to negotiate your worth, or some of those different pieces. So many were the same. And so it's just fascinating to me that as time goes on, there are so many people out there that are really understanding of where we are. But as women, it's sometimes hard to ask for the help, and or even just show that side of you. But it can really be a game changer if you can open up.
Absolutely. So something you touched on earlier was talking about don't try and be perfect. Just get it out there.
Yes.
Expand on that thought process, because that also goes to the overwhelm, the anxiety, and the stress. It's not perfect. I can't put it out there. Everybody will laugh. Or I know it's not perfect, but I have 50 more things to do by this deadline. Speak on that, if you would.
Yes. So I had a boss at one of my jobs, and she used to always joke with me, because she would say that my 80% would be somebody else's 120%. And I would say, no, it's not. And, argue with her. But I wanted to always put my best work forward. And so in my mind, it was constantly, revising and adding to it and editing it. But what I really needed to do was to get it to an amazing place and get input, give feedback, or put it out there if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a boss, and put it out there to get feedback from people. And so as an entrepreneur, one of the things I felt like that really continued to help me break that pattern was I would go and I would just talk to women. And I've always had such an interest in people and their stories and just learning from other people. But when I had this idea to build EvolveHer, I would go out and I would talk to them about their needs and where they were and, what they wanted. But if I would have been so stuck on what it was going to be and how I was going to build it before going out there, then it would have looked a lot different. And so while I had a lot of the foundation there, they had such like the sound bites and the feedback that they gave during that time was instrumental for me to build my business. And so I've realized there's so much value in just putting something out there. And then also from a, sanity perspective or like being able to delegate or to actually produce, or scale your business. You have to be able to let go enough. And it's not like you're going to put bad work out there, but it doesn't have to be perfect that, there's so much of it. We're constantly putting out content and everything's accessible and it's just not scalable and it's not good for you to spend all your time criticizing it. And I think you should really feel proud of what you accomplish and celebrate that instead of, spending the time on the negativity.
So let's talk about negativity. So that inner self-talk, that self-criticism, I'm not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not ready. How do you step out of that and break that cycle?
Oh gosh, yes. So I love Brene Brown and she is amazing. And so one of the skills that I learned from her was to recognize it. And so for me, it happens like this, where something triggers me and I just feel, this so like upset about something. And so I can feel it stirring in me. And so it's either I'm, upset about something or something is, somebody says something and it, I could take it as it being a critique or that kind of thing. And so if you can recognize this emotion and stop it before it explodes, then that is such a win, because oftentimes we just react and we don't think about things. And then it goes into a spiral of shame and this negative talk. And so sometimes what happens is, you may call me and you say something and say you were short with me. And like, gosh, Heather was really short this morning. Or, I might interpret it based off of however my morning is or project and that kind of thing. But really, you had something go on with your family or your, career or your car, like has nothing to do with me. And so if I just stop and have a conversation and check in with you and make sure you're okay, then half the time you don't have to open the door to that shame spiral. And as far as the talk in our head, I feel like we spend so much energy just going into this place where we're critiquing ourselves or we're constantly, just not good enough or should have done this or why didn't I think of this? And if we spent half of that energy on how we can move forward and on things that create impact, we would be so much more productive, happy lives, enjoy those joyful moments, more present. And my kids, it was so funny. My 8-year-old the other day asked me, he asked me if I had any advice for him. And I thought that was pretty profound for an 8-year-old boy. And I told him that I spent so much time and energy when I was younger, thinking about what other people said or, having a dialogue with myself. And I think that is the biggest thing you can do for yourself is to, give yourself a pat on the back, embrace it, and being able to acknowledge or to have conversation around things before they spiral.
Oh, that leads me into, that may have been your answer. I was going to ask you, what would you tell your younger self to spend less time on? What did you waste your time on in your career and in your personal life that you would say, if I would have just known that one thing, I wouldn't have done that?
I would definitely say that I learned at a certain point how to drown out the noise and to be able to focus more on things that matter. And for me, before that, everybody's always going to have something to say. Everybody's going to have an opinion. And it's your choice of how you want to respond to that. And so a lot of times I would allow myself to read it or listen to it. And it's not that it's all negative. It's just, there are some great ideas, but when you have a vision and you're clear, or if you take the time to reflect and you're aligned on the things that are important in life and your career, then that's great. Then that's just, some input, and maybe you'll incorporate it later, maybe not, but you're still focused on where you want to go and you're not getting distracted by that. So the ability to really be able to drown out the noise and to stay focused on a direction, and then just reassess every 6 months or a year to make sure that's still the direction you're going. But it's so important. And I wasted so many times getting distracted with all kinds of stuff throughout the years.
So what do you wish you would have spent more time on? If you could go back 15, 20 years, I would have spent more time on this. I would have been so much further, so much happier, so much calmer, so much whatever, fill in the blank.
Yes, I think that when I was younger, 15 or 20 years ago, I really felt the need to have I don't want to say story, but it was about, I'm going to major in this. I'm going to work here. I'm going to do this, instead of really taking the time to see what I loved the most along the way. And so I definitely have a windy road of my path, that I've experienced a lot of different things and had a lot of different jobs and areas of focus. And I do believe that everything you learn, you kind of take skills with you. So like I started in web design, and I still am in digital and, the tech world. But I think that I just didn't allow myself enough space to really dig into it. It's like double click, right? I see it and I would make decisions, but I wish I would have spent some time thinking things through to just really understand how they all connect together, or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. One of the best pieces of advice you've ever received was what?
Oof. I think to give yourself permission not to be attached to the outcome of something. And so if I am trying something new, most of the fear is around what's going to happen afterwards, right? So if you're able to distance yourself from the outcome and just accept that you are trying this, taking the risk, and if it fails, it fails. If it succeeds, it succeeds. But you learn along the way. And I think while I've always taken these bold risks and I've done all these things, I would still get caught up on that outcome of it, of what's it going to be. And the anxiety or the worry would be around that. And so to be able to distance yourself in it, it's very freeing. And to be able to still, move forward with things, but then you're also looking at it differently. And so you're able to monitor things along the way. So then you can see things and you can adjust, you can adapt them, evolve, pivot them, optimize, or get rid of it, or add to it. And so it's a different perspective for sure.
If there were 5 people in the room, 2 of them failed constantly, 3 of them played it safe, who would you choose to be on your team?
Failed, 100%. I am a big believer. Well, I say that if they failed and talk about it, learn from it, took smart risks, not crazy, risk. But I would much rather go with people who are willing to take the leap and to try new things and to be open-minded and to learn from it than to play it safe. I've never really fit in a box, or, the straight line kind of path wasn't ever for me. But I feel like there's so much to just learn from our mistakes. And it sounds very cliche, but it is so true in everything in life and in your career. And if you can look at it, it's that perspective shift. If you can just shift your perspective instead of shaming yourself about how you failed or this didn't work out, and take the pieces out of it that you want to continue to carry through, take those learnings, those insights, that is just so powerful. And just to know that, you were willing to take a chance on yourself, like that gives people confidence as well.
Love it. Love it. Well, what are you up to next? What would you like to share with the people out there? Tell them where they can find you. I know they're all going to love what you have to say. You and I will be collaborating on a few exciting projects in the year to come. But where can people find you?
Yes, so you can go to evolveher.community. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Alicia_Driskill or at EvolveHer. And we have some exciting events and courses coming up. So you can check them out there in the next few months.
Terrific. Well, Alicia, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I know we'll have you back on in the very near future. In the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in the months to come. And thank you so much for your time.
It was so great to chat. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning into the Mentors and Moguls podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, rate and review this interview and share it with a friend who could benefit from today's guest. You can find bonus video episodes at mentorsandmogulspodcast.com or check out our events page and our blog at heatherrstone.com. Until next time, make it a great day.